2024 was certainly the year of all time for me. I did a lot of videos, watched a lot of movies, played an amount of games, but more notably, the thing I spent the most time doing in 2024 was watching anime. Yeah, not sure how that happened. See, prior to 2024, I was not a big anime person. I had a very small Dragon Ball phase when I was younger, but that didn't last long at all. My main knowledge stemmed from Pokemon, just like nearly any other child. In 2020, I did get into My Hero Academia via an ex-friend of mine, but even then, my enjoyment of that fell off after a bit. Although, I was still a fan of it. Beyond that, every time I tried to watch anime, I would watch maybe a couple episodes and then I'd drop it entirely. It happened with, and I already know I'm gonna get crucified for every name I'm about to mention here, but I promise I will eventually return to these shows one day, I swear, so please don't kill me. Kill la Kill, Black Clover, Demon Slayer, and even Naruto. There's probably more that I'm just forgetting. The only anime I surprisingly did not drop and actually ended up liking was actually Spy Family. It got pushed a lot on my Twitter timeline, and I liked what I saw of it, so I chose to check it out, and I actually ended up really enjoying that. But that was back in April 2022, so it was more of an exception to the rule. I also did watch Brand New Animal, but I didn't really like that. Although the music is fire. I wouldn't truly start to binge anime until January 2024, so today I want to go mostly in order of when I watched these shows and talk about every single anime I watched in 2024 and talk about my experiences with them, and obviously what I think of them. Before we begin, I do want to shout out Daryl Talks Games, as well this video is obviously not about video games. His backlog videos are in fact what inspired me to do this video. While I will be trying to go in order of everything I've watched, some stuff will 100% be out of order because my memory isn't that good, unfortunately. I'll mainly be using my old media thread on Twitter and tweets talking about what I'm watching to keep somewhat in order. Also, I'll try my best to avoid spoilers here, but if I feel like it's necessary to talk about them, I will. But I will provide a warning beforehand. But with that out of the way, let's go back a bit to 2023? Throughout 2022 and 2023, I have slowly but surely become a massive Xenoblade fan. If you know me personally, you've probably heard of the highly regarded JRPG Nintendo series at least a couple hundred times now due to me. Okay, now you're probably thinking, okay, they must surely be going to say that since Xenoblade has a very anime-inspired style, that's how they slowly got back into anime as a whole. No, you see, because of my obsession, I decided to make a bet with a friend who also had a strong, unrelenting hyperfixation. If they could beat Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I would watch and do a video on an anime of their choice. Now, they took forever to beat Xenoblade 3, so in January 2024, I ended up watching the anime regardless and just didn't tell them to make sure they still beat the game. But what anime was that exactly? Well, I'm sure it's probably not the one you're expecting. Unless you looked at the timestamps/chapters, in that case you probably know it's... Bocchi the Rock, a series I have definitely not talked about multiple times on this channel already. Jokes aside, I really do love this series. Bocchi the Rock is a comedy anime manga focused on Hitori Goto, a teenage girl suffering from immense social anxiety. While at its core it thrives in its immensely exaggerated comedy and animation, it also does not treat social anxiety like a joke. It has a lot of moments between its main group, Kazoku Band, which feel genuine and grounded. Its comedy is very creative and unique, and Hitori's development is very well written and highly relatable. Bocchi the Rock is a brilliant series with a lot of heart to it, and I couldn't be more excited to watch Season 2 when it releases in a few years. So after Bocchi, where do I go from here? Right, of course, another show about social anxiety. Unlike with Bocchi, I had genuinely no plans to watch this show. In fact, the only reason I watched Komi is because Sonic Prime Season 3 was...
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
I've spoken about Komi here before as well, although not as much as I have with Bocchi. I fully believe Komi to be a pretty overhated series. I've seen tons of hate for this online, which honestly shocked me. Personally, I found it to be really charming for the most part. The comedy is, again, mostly effective, and whenever the show stops for more serious moments, it always hits right. Despite the show being far more over the top than Bocchi, I still found its depiction of social anxiety to be pretty grounded and well thought out. On the downside, I want Yamai shot dead. And that's why I keep saying mostly, because anytime Yamai is involved, which is a lot unfortunately, she detracts from literally everything. Like, there's some other freaks in here, but she is the freak. Beyond Yamai though, Komi is still pretty damn good. It's got a great OST, visually is also surprisingly good, and again, the writing is very effective. Though, despite me saying that I got into anime in January, I actually didn't watch another show after Comey until late March. This is probably because I did actually have more games I was interested in checking out at the time. Persona 3 Reload just came out, I was busy with the Pokemon Emerald retrospect, and I was also busy completing Xenoblade 2. On top of doing videos, I didn't have much time to watch any shows. When I finally did get the chance to watch something though, well, Harimaya, yes, I know it's pronounced Mia, but I like, Maya just sounds better to me. I know it's Miyamura, and I do say Miyamura, not Mayamura, but Harimaya just sounds better, okay. It's one of my favorite romance anime of all time, and that's genuinely not a joke. There's just a part of my brain that this show really pleases, and I've rewatched it a few times just because I enjoy going back and watching these characters. Now, the first season isn't the best thing ever. It's pretty good, but the pacing is very fast, especially for a first-time viewer, which drags the season down a lot. If you only like slow burn relationships, you probably won't enjoy Harimaya because it straight up takes 4 episodes for Miyamura to confess, and 5 for them to get together. And that's only one example of the pacing issues. The big reason Season 1 has these major pacing issues is because back then they weren't aware the show was going to be so successful, so they adapted the entire manga into a 13-episode season, which, obviously wasn't the best decision, but then when it was successful, they instantly went back and released Harimaya the Missing Pieces. It's like Season 2, but not Season 2. Missing Pieces is basically a season meant to go back and adapt stories from the manga that they didn't have time to adapt in the first season. And a hot take, I enjoyed this season more than the first season. While Season 2 doesn't have a coherent narrative, I felt like it added a lot to the characters and their relationships. Everyone feels like they have more time to breathe, and it does way more to make everything they're involved in feel more natural and real. Although I can't do a full review here of this show, because I'm covering so much in this video, there really is a lot to love about Harimaya, and it's become a huge comfort show for me. Also, going off script for a second, I figured I'd mention the OVA because I realized I actually forgot to mention it in the script. So the 6-episode OVA is based on the webcomic, which is actually, it's pretty cute. The OVA is pretty cute. It's not much to say about it. I actually really like the art style. I think the art style is, personally, I believe it to be more unique, and in my opinion, in ways, it's better than the anime. Obviously, though, the anime is visually better, like objectively. But I do have like little things I prefer. But beyond that, the OVA is pretty cute. Okay, so the first 3 shows I've talked about have all been slice of life or romance, but I'm sick of these modern day high schoolers. We need to go back to medieval times. We need to go beyond a journey's end. Wait.
Say that again?
This show is magical, both figuratively and literally. From the get-go, Frieren is unique in so many ways. The choice to set the story after the typical adventure has ended is a really smart idea. In video game terms, it's like a post-game disguised as the main story. Visually, Frieren is absolutely beautiful. It's directed by Keiichiro Saito, ironically the same guy who directed the first season of Bocchi the Rock, and with this alongside Bocchi Season 1, he makes his talent pretty known. There are so many breathtaking moments in this anime, it's insane. I'm sure a lot of people would probably struggle to get into this because it is admittedly a much slower pace, but I think that's why it works so well. While the fights are great whenever we get them, Frieren Beyond Journey's End is character writing first, everything else second. It takes its time to truly let you appreciate and breathe in everything it has to offer. I cannot recommend this series anymore without spoiling, which I'm really trying not to do with every show I'm talking about here. But please, even if you feel it's outside of your comfort zone, I really implore you to give Frieren a shot. I swear you'll probably end up loving it. Didn't think this would be here, did you? Yep, soon after I beat Persona 3 Reload, I decided to check out the Persona 3 movie adaptations. They're pretty good. I'm not really sure of the consensus of these films, but I personally found them to be great. All of these films have their own major changes to accommodate for the fact that this is a movie series and not a 70+ hour game. And those changes were pretty smart. Some of them I even wish were actually part of the games. By far my favorite movie is the last one though, Winter of Rebirth. It focuses on December and January and is this big character study of everyone within Seas. An issue the first 2 films have is that they don't give much time to breathe because they're basically focused on speedrunning through the main parts of the game. But with November, December, and January, it's all a lot more character focused, with a little less going on in terms of action, so there's a hell of a lot more time to give everyone freedom. they also give Makoto more of a personality and an actual arc, which the game doesn't get to do because Makoto is supposed to be a vessel for the player. I'm not going to spend much more time on these films. I feel like it's safe to say if you love Persona 3, you will probably like these. Okay, back to high school romances. I fucking love Kimi ni Todake, and it's almost perfect timing that I'm talking about this now, because it got a Season 3 back in August after Season 2 finished 14 years prior. Everything feels so right, the character drama is on point here, and I love how hard it hammers home that not everything will go the way you want. Ryu and Chizuru have my favorite relationship in the series. I thought this in Season 1, I thought it in Season 2, and I definitely think it in Season 3. While Kazuhaya and Sawako are very good, their development is nothing compared to Ryu and Chizu. Now, on the topic of relationships, I will say I just don't vibe with Kento and Ayane. Well, okay, I like Ayane, I don't fuck with Kento, but I don't know what it is about him, I just don't like him. Visually, this show took a little bit for me to get used to, but it hit for me around midway through Season 1. Kimi no Todake is just a very fascinating show with a lot of very real feeling character drama, development, and romance. I can't go heavily into it here, but I really do recommend it. Now, guess what show I don't recommend? Yeah, if I haven't been shot already, I really do not like Solo Leveling. Keep in mind I've only seen Season 1, Season 2 is currently airing as I'm writing this, but I have no desire to watch that, so I'm not going to. I'm going to exaggerate for the sake of comedy here, but this show is just absurdly fucking boring. The first few episodes were kind of alright and presented an actually interesting premise. The first few episodes are also the last time the main character shows any sort of personality. To be positive, the animation, fight choreography, etc. are all genuinely good and really worthy of the praise they've been given. But nothing can save Solo Leveling from what is overall an incredibly boring, generic power trip fantasy, where past like episode 4 or 5, I really can't remember, the protag has as much personality as a piece of cardboard and he wins every single fight thanks to plot armor. I don't like this anime, I'm sorry, but not really, let's move on. And we're back to romance. Yeah, I feel like anyone who cares about romance shows or enjoys comedies has probably seen Kaguya-sama Love is War already. The premise of the show revolves around Kaguya Shinomiya and Miyuki Shirogane trying to make each other confess because their egos are way too big for them to allow themselves to confess the regular way. It's an overall strong premise with effective comedy and generally good writing. Now, you're probably asking, wait, didn't you already say you'd watch this at the start of the video? And to that I say, yeah, I did. This one in particular was mostly a rewatch, although I hadn't seen most of Season 5 and most of Season 6, as I kind of watched them sporadically when they released, so it wasn't entirely a rewatch. Regardless, I wanted to mention MHA here, as this rewatch gave me a large new appreciation for this show. On that note, MHA is a pretty controversial anime. Lots of people like it, others despise it. Me personally, I fall into the former. Deku has quickly become one of my favourite protagonists of all time, and overall the cast of MHA is just incredibly strong, which is really high praise considering the main cast is large. But I feel like there's at least one character here everyone can connect to and like. Obviously, not everyone gets equal screen time or development, but I don't have any complaints with how the cast was handled overall. I'm not going to get into it all here because eventually I do want to make a full video on MHA, but I really believe my hero is incredibly misunderstood. While its animation isn't the best, and it visually could be better as well, its writing is pretty damn strong and genuinely one of my favourite shows in general. Now, if only the fandom could be tolerable for more than a second. I think I need to apologise to this movie in all honesty. I honestly didn't expect to go into it loving it as much as I did. I'd argue it's probably in my top 5 favourite films of all time, which is insanely high praise. A Silent Voice is a beautiful story about atoning for your past actions and facing the consequences that will ripple through life because of those actions. While I'm obviously not death, I did really connect with Choco on the level of being someone who has faced bullying and neglect in the past. In the space of 2 hours, the movie has a lot to make you connect and want to see these characters thrive in the face of what they're dealing with. I won't go any further to avoid getting into spoilers and all that, but this movie, no joke, made me cry and I implore you to watch it if you have the time. I think Shinkai catches a lot of flack nowadays for overusing the whole boy and girl fall in love, but there's some kind of magical twist plot. But to be fair, one of those times wasn't his fault. They better let this man make his theory. I know he has something fire in him. But that's not the subject here. Your Name is pretty highly regarded for a good reason. While yes, it falls into that whole idea I just mentioned, here's the thing. It's executed really fucking well. Like all of Shinkai's stuff, Your Name is very beautifully animated. When it comes to visuals, it's genuinely impeccable. Soundtrack is also awesome. Every twist and turn in this film is unexpected and well executed. Your Name is just a genuinely good time, and I can't fault it for that. Man, July and April really is something special. Everything is executed pretty much perfectly. I'm gonna get into some fairly heavy spoilers here, so skip to this timestamp on screen if you want to avoid them. Alright, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Romance is obviously a core of the series, and I love how it makes you want to root for both sides. Obviously, Kaori and Kosei are the main pairing, but I really did think Tsubaki was a great character and would match well with Kosei. I love how Kairi's death is a parallel to the death of Kosei's mom. How, when his mom died, he fell into a Great Depression and was unable to get out of it until he met Kairi. But then, when Kairi dies, he's not depressed. He's sad, anyone would be, but it's more hopeful. Even though she's gone, he can still move forward with his life and continue chasing after his hopes and dreams in honor of her life. Your Lie in April strikes heavy for realism in its writing, and it's all the more benefited because of that. We can't always have things go the way we want in life, but what matters is whether you revolve your life around what went wrong, or you move forward in spite of that. Sound Euphonium. What an interesting show. Another series where I'm getting into spoilers. Sorry, I know that's 2 in a row now, but I really need to talk about spoilers here, so skip to this timestamp on screen to avoid them. For the most part, it's pretty great, and deserving of the praise and respect it's garnered in the community. Kumako's journey feels realistic and well written. The entire series generally has great character writing and drama, along with some beautiful visuals to pair. However, definitely not perfect, particularly when you get to Season 3. Reina's arc in Season 3 is not very good, to say the least, and I didn't really like the choice of who gets the Soli because it didn't feel fair to Kumako at all. It felt like it was punishing her just for the sake of punishing her, instead of giving her any meaningful character development. I don't really like how hard they went on Kumako and Reina's relationship, while also doing little to progress Kumako and Shuichi's relationship, considering Kumako ends up with him, not Reina. In the end, her and Shuichi's relationship felt like they were forced together rather than naturally growing to like each other, whereas with her and Reina, especially in Season 1, they go heavy on pushing them as a couple, and I'm aware this is not the case in the light novel, but considering they already changed a major plotline in the anime, that being Kumako and Reina solely, and the anime team was clearly batting for Kumako and Reina, I feel like they should have had those two end up together instead of Kumako and Shuichi, because in the anime, the whole romance plotline simply falls apart. Beyond that though, Sound Euphonium is a very well written show, and definitely one of my favourites from last year. Liz and the Bluebird is the best thing to come from it though, in my opinion. Please watch Liz and the Bluebird. It's not essential to the series at all, but it's really good. Well, time to be negative.
Again!
My Oni Girl is certainly a movie of all time. Visually and audibly, this movie is great, but plot-wise, it's a total mess. The pacing sucks at the start, lots of concepts the movie introduces go completely unexplained, character motivations make no sense. Like, a big thing about this movie is saving Tsumagi's, the main female protagonist's, mum, who I think gives herself to this role that prevents the snow gods from attacking or something like that, but then she just ends up leaving the role for no explained reason, and then even though it should have had consequences, it basically didn't, so I don't even know why she was in that role in the first place. Like, this movie is just really confusing and not very good at all. There's just so much about it that makes absolutely no sense. Don't watch this, don't do it. It's really not worth your time. It makes it worse that this is the movie I watched on my birthday. Whoever named this anime, genuinely, unironically, needs to be fired. It is so good, but also so hard to recommend to people without looking like a gooner. Beyond that, Rascal's pretty good. Really fun premise that tackles mature themes in a very interesting way, and I found each of the characters to be pretty enjoyable to watch. This show is like comfort food. Yeah, I typed the words K-On! And asked myself how the fuck I talk about K-On!, and this is the best way I could describe it. It is just a very funny, cute anime about a light music club and their silly little daily life. I didn't watch the movie until a few months after I finished the show. When I did watch it, it reminded me a lot of why I like K-On!, because at the end of the day, it's not anything deep or crazy, it's just stupid fun. There is a very, very good reason Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is regarded as the best anime of all time, or at least in the top 3. There is a reason that when you check my anime list, over 900 people have recommended it with less than 15 not recommended, because it really is that good. Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a remake of the original series from 2003, which aired at a time when the manga was still ongoing. So eventually, that series has to take on its own original stories and began to heavily diverge from the manga. Brotherhood was created with the intention of being a complete adaptation of the manga from start to finish, and that's exactly what it did. As of writing this, I haven't seen 2003. I do plan to watch it one day, but I unfortunately haven't had the chance yet. But Brotherhood is incredible. Despite being set in a fantasy world full of magic, it tells a very human story about family, ethics, war, government corruption, and more. Is it ethical to resurrect dead? When given these incredible abilities, how far should one take them? At the end of the day, we're still humans, not gods. The visual identity of the show, the animation, the voice acting, and the soundtrack are all incredible. The English dub, in my opinion, is a great way to watch the show. I'd argue this might be the best English dub ever made. All of the characters are perfectly casted and provide great performances. I beg you to please watch Brotherhood, it's gained the hype it has for good ass reason. Considering I made a full 18-minute video analyzing Nina and have rewatched this series 3 whole times already, I think you know where this one's going. I love Girls Band Cry. Slowly but surely, this became my favorite anime of all time. I love the characters, I love the music, I love the way they integrated the CGI with the 2D backgrounds. It can be a little noticeable at times, but for the most part, it's perfect and blends together really well. I'm not going to spend much time on this. You already know how much I love the series. It's genuinely immaculate, and I need a season 2. Please, Toei. Yep, I'm sorry, I don't like weathering with you. Once again, like all Shinkai works, it's visually stunning. It's animated really well, and every shot looks impeccable. Story-wise, not quite as strong. Unfortunately and ironically, Weathering with You focuses too much on the romance that it forgets that its characters are individuals. Haruka has issues at home, which is why he ends up homeless as seen at the start of the film, but that plotline is never really furthered at all. And the ending is not very well written. See, Haruka and Hina end up doing something just a little bit insane to save Hina. You know, it's nothing too major, it's... how do I put this? They just end up flooding Tokyo. No, that's not a joke, you can watch the film. In order to save Hina, they end up flooding Tokyo, potentially killing hundreds of people, and at the very least caused a major housing problem based on the amount of people who definitely just lost their homes. And what consequences did they get for this? Nothing. They face no consequences whatsoever. Yeah, this movie's not very good. I'm moving on. Okay, I promise this is the final Shinkai work I'm going to talk about this video. Suzume is Shinkai's most recent film as of this video being written and most likely released, and it was originally meant to be Yuri, but they told Shinkai no, so he turned the male protagonist into a chair instead. Shout out Shinkai for real, for real. Jokes aside, film's pretty good. I don't think I need to talk about the visuals, you know how it is with these movies at this point. The pacing was a little weird, and I think the relationship felt way too one-sided on Suzume's part. It's clear she likes Shota, but there's nothing to suggest he likes her. Aside from those complaints though, the movie is very creative and incredibly unique. It has a lot to like about it. Yeah, I don't really know what to write for this one either, honestly. It's very cute and a good time. The mysteries are well made, and it's easy to get invested in the characters and the relationships. I do hope this gets a season 2 one day, but I know it's unlikely. Similar to Hyoka, I'm not too sure how to speak about this. I mean, it's good, definitely not a bad show. I didn't really care for it too much, but again, it's good. The relationship between Adachi and Shimamura is pretty cute, but beyond that, I don't have anything else to say. Toradora is fucking awesome. Taiga is a little shithead, but she's still a very good character. The relationship with Toradora are very well written, honestly having you rooting for both Taiga and Minori, who, by the way, Minori is by far my favorite character. I'm a sucker for airheads in anime. They tend to always be close to my favorite, if not then just straight up my favorite, and Minori is no different here. It's a very comedic and also a very heartwarming show. It's very well written and well animated as well. I didn't expect to love this one as much as I did, but I was pleasantly surprised. This one's a more recent one. I didn't really care for Nakaton, unfortunately. It's not a bad series at all, don't get me wrong, it just wasn't my thing. I did think there was a lot to like about it, but I just couldn't get into it. And it's a similar thing with Jujutsu Kaisen. Yep, again, I'm sorry, I didn't really care for this series. Animation-wise and visually, it's absurdly good, but that's usually the case when you end up overworking your animators to the brink of death. Writing-wise, Yuji is a great protagonist, he's very charming and incredibly fun to watch. Same with Yuta and JJK Zero, who I honestly kind of prefer to Yuji. And while not a protagonist, I fucking adore Todo. By far the best character in the series, and arguably a top 10 character in fiction. The whole cast is honestly very good and fun to watch, but beyond that, the actual plot I don't really care for, like, at all. JJK is a lot of fun, but that's really all it is for me. It's not a series I personally care to get myself invested in, but I get why people are invested. Now, on the opposite side, you know that meme with Will Smith that's been going around where it's like, y'all got any good writing? And the robot says, we got hype moments and aura. What if you had those hype moments and aura, but also kept the good writing? Well, you get Gurren Lagann. This anime is the definition of hype. You search a peak fiction, this series comes up. If the indomitable human spirit was a brand, this series is the marketing for that brand. I fuck with the indomitable human spirit heavy now, man. I still go back to that final battle and Simon's speech this very day. The music and overall vibe of the series is awesome. I could not ask for anything else. This is how you do a mecha anime. Yep. You don't even need to say it. I know. I'm embarrassed as well. Miku should have won, by the way, but that's beside the point. I'm not even gonna waste any more time on this. I'm moving on. Let's just move on. Okay, I'm aware this one is really liked, and I definitely see the appeal. However, I didn't personally care too much for it. On a more tame note, one of my reasons is how Season 1 ends. I understand this likely wasn't the fault of the people behind the anime. They only have so much time in a season and can't adapt everything they want to, which is totally fine. However, the ending, while cute, is just very lackluster. A core focus of the series is the play that the student council is putting on, and they never perform that play. Instead, Season 1 ends with an aquarium date, which, while cute, is not a very interesting end. Beyond that, my real issues start with how the relationship between Yu and Toko is presented. I'm not sure how it's handled in the manga, because I haven't read it, but in the anime, it honestly just felt very one-sided, and like Toko was forcing herself onto Yu. It just felt very uncomfortable to watch, in my opinion, but again, I can kinda see how people like it. As someone who has been really wanting to get into art lately, although not particularly as a job, but more so just a hobby, this movie felt very relatable and real. Look Back is overall a very informative film about how much effort goes into making manga and art in general, but it's also a good reminder to not be scared about taking a leap and doing what you want to do in life. It's a reminder about why art exists in the first place. I really could not recommend this film more. It's less than an hour long, it's a beautiful story, please check it out. I was pleasantly surprised by Too Many Losing Heroines. This series had already caught my interest previously, as I saw a lot of praise for it all over Twitter, and in the end, I'd say that praise was very deserved. While overall Too Many Losing Heroines is very high energy, and that's best showcased by the opening theme of the show, it's also rather good at telling stories about heartbreak and how people can move forward when things don't really go their way. To make things better, as is protocol with most A1 Pictures anime, the series is very beautifully animated with a lot of incredible looking visuals, which they didn't really need to do considering it's meant to be a slice of life, but they did it anyways. While I don't think Too Many Losing Heroines is perfect anyway, I do think it's a really enjoyable time. I watched the 2020 version, which is why it's on here. I didn't watch 2003 because I heard it had a pretty bad ending. Undoubtedly, this movie had me teared the fuck up at points, and it's another one that had been on my radar for a good while. It's a really good movie about learning to push forward with your hopes and dreams, even when presented with life-changing challenges. I loved the bond between Josei and Tsuneyo a lot, and I was really happy with how the movie came out. This is a funny one, and one I'm probably gonna get shit for. You know, ironically, the manga for this series was announced to be ending while I was writing the script, but that's not important, I just figured it was funny to mention. Okay, My Dress Up Darling. As an anime, how was it? Well, to start positively, I really loved Gojo and Marin's dynamic. I definitely think their relationship and personalities as a whole carry the series without a doubt. However, it gets kinda spoiled. This series pushes heavily on the sexualization of its cast. It's in pretty much every episode, and as a result, it makes it really uncomfortable to watch. Usually, I can bring myself to turn a blind eye. Hell, I started the video gassing up Komi Can't Communicate, and that does an uncomfortable amount as well. But somehow Dress Up Darling is worse than any anime I've ever seen when it comes to this issue. Somehow worse than quintessential quintuplets, which shouldn't be possible. While I do think it's a solid series, those moments in particular really bring it down for me and make it difficult to recommend or even watch. Dear God, Violet Evergarden. Specifically talking about the show for a second, it's genuinely perfect. I mean, Violet's arc about learning to become human and growing through her loss is beautifully told in the series, and helps to make Violet a very compelling character to watch and experience. The show is rather episodic in nature for the most part, as it sees Violet doing her job as an auto-memory doll, and giving her first-hand experience to see how the people around her struggle and move forward in life. A robot, or someone with a robotic personality, learning to become more human is a rather simple idea that's been done quite a bit in media, but what matters is how it's executed, and Violet Evergarden serves to execute that perfectly. And then we get to the second movie. The first movie, just to address it, pretty fun watch. Not a required thing, but if you want more Violet content, then I really do recommend it. The second movie, though, honestly sucks. Unfortunately, while it keeps the stunning animation, visual style, and brilliant voice acting of Violet Evergarden alive and well, as an ending, it is a complete and total joke to Violet's story and character arc. Spoilers ahead here, and once again, skip to this time stamp on screen to avoid them. I will be addressing this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it turns out Gilbert is actually alive, and while the movie could have handled this in a way that keeps him alive but allows Violet to finish her character arc by recognizing that the person she idolized all this time was never truly the person she thought he was, and letting go of him by returning home to a family that actually does care for her, they instead have her stay with Gilbert, still addressing him by Major and not his actual name, and she lives the rest of her life with him, leaving her as nothing more than a puppet, which is exactly what she was supposed to be growing out of, not into. It's a major character regression for Violet, and laughs in the face of every core theme of the show. It's a happy, in quotes, ending for the sake of a happy ending, and while usually I'm all for happy endings, that's only when they're executed well, which this wasn't. It's unfortunate because I really do love the show and the first movie, but the second movie really brings an otherwise perfect series to a truly unfortunate end. Okay, let's get this out of the way. You're probably asking yourself, wait, didn't a remake of the Ranma Half series come out last year? Why are you talking about the 89 version? Well, to put it simply, I was curious to see how the original 89 version was before I checked out the remake, which I won't be covering in this video because I didn't watch it until this year, aka 2025, but if I make a sequel to this video in 2026, I'll probably talk about it there. The 89 version, though, was honestly pretty good. It's not perfect, and I found myself skipping most of the filler, except for the ones I saw people saying you have to watch, such as Ryoga with his dog. But the characters were incredibly memorable and fun to watch. It's not something I think is good enough to watch 160 plus episodes of, but it's a very serviceable show, and the English dub is excellent. All-timer dub right there. There's not much I can say about Shikimori. It's just a really cute anime. It's very short, but it's also an enjoyable time. Also, they have a character who is literally a Bakugo ripoff, and I think that's really funny. This is another anime where I really didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but similar to what I said about Too Many Losing Heroines, I'm in love with the villainess. It's so stupidly high energy that I can't help but love every second of it. Ray Taylor is genuinely such an incredibly fun protagonist to watch, and her dynamic with Claire is great too. I will say I do think the villainess title is a bit misleading, considering Claire isn't really a villain, but that's a very minor nitpick in an otherwise great series with a really charming cast. I hope this gets a season 2 eventually, I really do mean it. I watched this because Netflix would not stop recommending it to me, and overall, pretty solid movie. Cherry and Smile are really cute, and the animation and visual style is super unique, but I do think it could have used an extra 30 minutes of runtime since the ending is pretty fast. But aside from that, good movie. Would love to see it get a proper sequel someday. Wotakoi is probably one of the most unique romance anime I've seen, which makes it worse that the series is so surprisingly underrated, with no official English dub nor any legal way to stream it as of this script being written. It's a really entertaining office romance, which alone helps to make it stand out a lot, considering most of the romance genre tends to take place in a high school setting. But each of the relationships have very different dynamics for each other, which also helps to make each plotline involving them feel refreshing to see, because each couple brings something new to the table. I really recommend checking out Wotakoi and giving it more attention because it's genuinely pretty underrated and I wish it was recognizable. Laid Back Camp is such an interesting show because it's not trying to do anything. It's not trying to stand out, but it's also not trying to provide a low quality product. It's a series that does what it needs to do, and it succeeds at that. Hell, it exceeds it. Laid Back Camp is a vibe. That is the best way I can describe it. You aren't watching this show for complex storytelling, or crazy character arcs, or impeccable animation. You're watching Laid Back Camp to relax, to sit down and enjoy something peaceful after a long day. It is not a series that changed my life, but it is something I think we need more of. A product that simply does what it needs to do while retaining the quality expected of it, and that's exactly what Laid Back Camp does. And then you have the opposite side of the spectrum. Tonikawa is It's okay, I guess. I mean, it's not a bad anime at all, it's just kind of there. It's really forgettable and honestly weirdly feels low quality in areas. I don't know, something about the way Tonikawa is designed just made it very unappealing to me. The characters are, again, okay, I just don't really feel a connection or care about anyone. Also, not a negative or a criticism, but I want to bring up, I'm pretty sure the series broke like 15 copyright laws. Like, there is an episode where they straight up just play Street Fighter V. I'm not kidding about this. It's not a fake or an in-universe copy. They like full-on show Street Fighter V gameplay, and it's probably the funniest moment in the series, just based on how out of nowhere it is. Now I can talk about a real peak series. Licorice Recall is another anime that heavily surpassed any expectations I had. I ended up fucking adoring Licorice. I knew I'd probably like it regardless, but not on the scale it ended up being. Licorice Recoil is just so great to me, and I think it's mostly because of Takana and Chisato. Takana is another case of a character with a robotic personality learning to become more human, but when paired with Chisato, you get one of my favorite duos of all time. On top of that, the action is great, and the story itself is fairly well written in my opinion. If even Hideo Kojima himself fucks this show heavy, you know it's gonna be doing something right. Look, Trinity Soul is boring as fuck, that's all you need to know. I don't want to talk about this on my channel any more than I already have. I did a full video on Trinity Soul like 2 months ago, go watch that. Mob Psycho 100 is incredibly special. The very first episode is beyond enough to get you absolutely hooked on it. It not only perfectly showcases the tone, but the quality of the series as well. That animation in the pilot episode ain't just a one-time thing, it stays that way throughout the entire series, and so does the tone and writing quality. Reagan is a flawed but lovable guy who shows he does genuinely care for Mob at the end of the day. Mob's journey of learning to open up and express himself again is fun but also deeply relatable and interesting. Everything about Mob Psycho 100 is executed brilliantly, and it really deserves the praise it gets. If you ask me what one of the best ongoing anime is right now, I'd genuinely tell you Dandadan. While I did find the ending of Season 1 to be a bit disappointing in terms of the finale, the rest of the first season was great. Behind all the action, there's a perfect romance story between Momo and Okarun, with the side characters also getting a lot of love and attention. Thankfully, Season 2 drops in July, so we really don't have to wait that long for a follow-up either. I was really disappointed by A Whisker Away, as it's another thing I had my eye on watching for a while. And unfortunately, I mean, it's okay. Some plot points needed more time to expand on, and ironically, the fantasy stuff of it all felt really out of place and like it was getting in the way of the characters' arcs. In defense of the movie, I saw a lot of people complain about Mio's whole stalker thing. While it is weird, I think people are forgetting she is literally 14. She's still basically a dumb child. I agree it should have been addressed, but I don't think it's as insane as people are making it out to be. It'd be way worse if she was a full-grown adult doing this. Now, technically, I should have talked about Whisker Away last, as not counting the K-On! Movie, because I've already talked about K-On!. This movie was the last thing I watched in 2024. However, I felt that'd be a disappointing way to end off the video. So, what was the last thing I watched? Well, it's a small anime. Not very well known, honestly, I'm probably the only person to ever speak of it. Point is, you've probably never heard of it, so let's just get it out of the way. What hasn't been said about Evangelion at this point? One of the most iconic anime of all time, you'd struggle to find someone who hasn't heard or seen this show at least once. Whether it be through people talking about it, cosplaying, or, you know, the memes. Evangelion falls into the Breaking Bad category of shows where it gets memed on a lot, and yet the anime itself is not what the memes would have you believe. There is a sense of tragedy behind it. No one in this cast is fit to save the world. Despite how much you want to root for them, everyone is too emotionally burdened, and those burdens affect how they work and fight together. There is not a single good adult in Evangelion, which in turn affects the kids they're meant to be teaching. Every character is complex and has substance to them. In a show about mechs fighting literal demons, it is scarily very human. I watched a video a little bit after I finished the movie The End of Evangelion about how Gurren Lagann and Evangelion complement each other. Or, well, more so how Gurren Lagann answers Evangelion. And it's a genuinely great video that I really recommend checking out, because it heavily enforces the point that Evangelion is an anime of tragedy. It is not about how, even when troubled with impossible odds, humans will break through. It is depressing, really. Humans can do anything, but when there's no one there to provide a hope or light in the dark, when there's no one there to support the people who need supporting mentally, when there's no Kamina type character, that light burns out. and it all falls apart. Before we end off, I'd like to give some attention to the only two shows I ended up dropping in the entirety of 2024, The Many Sides of Voice Actor Radio and The Dangers in My Heart. I know that second one is probably going to make people upset, but just give me a second. To start with Voice Actor Radio, the reason I dropped it is honestly because there are certain scenes just made me incredibly uncomfortable and went on for longer than they should have. And unfortunately, when the rest of the story doesn't make up for that, this was an easy drop, which is unfortunate because I was actually following VA radio before it aired and was genuinely interested. Now, The Dangers in My Heart, this is one that I know is wildly popular, and I will probably end up coming back to it, especially because I've been told I genuinely would like it, but I couldn't make it past the third episode in all honesty. Look, I'm sorry, but I just couldn't vibe with it. Well, after watching around 50 different anime throughout 2024, what did I get from it? To be honest, the main lesson I got is that if you think anime is getting stale or boring, stop watching shonen battle anime. Yep, I'm serious. I think a big reason I struggled getting into this type of media is because I felt forced to watch the big shonen battle anime, and while I love My Hero, Gurren Lagann, Dandadan, Full Metal, etc., I also really love Horimiya, Bocchi the Rock, Girls Band Cry, A Silent Voice, etc., and getting into slice of life, drama, romance, etc. really helps me to appreciate anime a whole lot more. Seeing these characters go through life dealing with genuinely human struggles that are more grounded in reality and not having this looming threat of this big demon guy is about to take over the world. Or whatever. It's simpler, but it's nice to watch, and that's not to say the other side can't have human stories. All of the examples I mentioned, like Dandadan or Full Metal, all have very human aspects and stories to them. But sometimes I want those stories without the crazy fantasy parts, and I think that's a fair opinion to have. But aside from that, that's all I gotta say. This script has gotten very long, so I'm gonna wrap this up quickly. Hopefully you found something from this video that maybe you want to check out or want to watch, or maybe I said something you really disagree with and you're now typing or have already typed a very angry comment. But regardless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.